Hey, my mentor, you know? So that is also, right? And I go back to the age, you know, age is no prerequisite to mentorship, you know? And there's people that I inquire that are younger than me that I still look up to, you know?
George Davis IV. He's a former Lou City soccer player and the executive director of the Lou City Racing Foundation, and he's going to talk to you guys about mentor this morning. Give him a round of applause.
Up, down. Ooh. All right, good start. All right. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who's in here. Incredibly humbled to be able to come and speak about a topic that's very, very passionate to me and has been a huge motivator and an influence in my life. I'm really excited to be here for two big reasons. One is I like to see myself as a creative, and I wouldn't have always said that. So shout out to the CreativeMornings team and Hannah and everything you guys are doing to pull this together. And as our lovely volunteers read out loud, passion, driven, bringing people together, community. It's really what's kept me in Louisville, if I'm being honest. And as I continue to grow, being included in spaces like this, not just for myself, but for everybody is very, very important. So we'll get started on the talk. Awesome. So mentor. I was trying to think about how to approach this, right? Because time is of the essence for everybody on a Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, but it's a topic that I could speak for hours on, if I'm being honest. I called my dad yesterday and I was like, hey Dad, speaking, and the topic is mentor. So I'm curious. At what age did you understand what being a mentor was, or mentee? And in a real George fashion, stoic-like, he says, well, it's different for everybody. Well, of course, Dad. But I'd say to you, what was that moment where you were like, yeah, I'm seeking a mentor, or I am a mentee? And for me, it was not till I was probably an adult that I realized how to be intentional of being a mentor, or understand those who guided me, or those who had an influence on my life, or gave me advice and gave me guidance. And so, as a youth, we're always learning and observing and, seeing what others are doing, both good and bad, right? And just like everything else in life, not all mentors are always a positive influence, and not all mentees take and listen to everything that you have to say. For example, for my mentors in the room, I wrote this down, I memorized it, and I'm reciting it. For those that know me, you know that I'm speaking from the heart, right? But again, advice from a mentor, trying to guide you and give you advice, but it's going to be different. We can only speak from our own experiences. What you went through is different than what I went through. And even though you may have some guidance and advice on how to handle a particular situation, it's going to look different when we face it and when I face it. So I want to get into a story and paint this picture, and I'm going to stand up now because I've stopped shaking and I'm not nervous. So imagine 14-year-old George, soccer player, led by soccer my whole life, driving up and down the highway, exposed to good coaches. I'm the oldest of four, but I was always around older people. So I was always like the youngest in my group. Was raised by my uncles and older cousins and things like that. So 14-year-old George, playing soccer, decent player, creative on the soccer field. And I get invited to go play soccer in Europe with a team, an all-star team essentially. And they're going to take us to Europe. a selection of players from all over Ohio, and we fly through Iceland. Our first stop is in Denmark, and we arrive in Denmark really late. We all are staying in a classroom. So imagine this room, and there's like 20 cots, and our coaches are in the room with us. And so being excited, I got all new stuff. I got 3 pair of new cleats, new shin guards, new gear, fresh jerseys. I mean, I'm just buzzing. You can only imagine how excited I am to get this going. And 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning of the first day, I wake up and I'm like, all right, is it time for training? No, time for training. Let's go. I'm ready to go. And so me being hungry, I reach over into my bag and I start grabbing out like chips and whatever candy I had. And the coach hears me and he's like, Georgie, they call me Georgie. Georgie, go to sleep. And I'm like, okay. So I pretend like I'm asleep. 5 minutes later, I'm digging in my bag again, trying to get some candy or chips or whatever. And the coach finally just gets up. And he's like, Georgie, put your clothes on. Let's go. We're going for a walk. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble now. Oh, what did I do, right? And so he takes me on a walk, and he walks me outside through kind of the villa and the school and where the place we were at. And he starts to talk to me about nutrition first, right? It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying to eat snacks, and we have a training session at 9. So if you're putting this crap into your body now, are you going to be prepared to train? Are you going to be prepared to play? It's a big moment for you, right? Everybody's here to give their best. Everybody wants to perform. So that was the initial lesson, but with the conversation came leadership, taking advantage of opportunities. He spoke to me about his playing career. He spoke to me about why he does what he does and why he was a college coach, but he took his summers to take players on these European tours. So maybe an hour-long conversation, and we go back in, and I had no idea the impact that conversation would have on my life. So reflection on that trip, just during that summer, I was named team captain of the team. I was MVP of the team. I was the leading goal scorer for the club. There were 3 teams on the trip. And it catapulted me into a space where I was able to go and achieve success on the soccer field. Coach Devin, who I really, he never coached me. We were far away. This was a really isolated interaction during this trip. But I don't think he woke up or planned to take me outside at 5 o'clock in the morning after we've been traveling to Europe overnight to teach me a lesson, right? And so the reason I tell this story is that unknowingly guided, he quietly shaped my life. Like in a sense of, I didn't speak to Devin for 20 years after that trip, but I always saw him as a mentor. And I don't want to get too far into it yet, but if you look at the work that I'm doing now, it's essentially mirroring what he's doing, what he was doing at the time to help shape young players, to help give them lessons, to help them not make the same mistakes that he may have made. And it turned out to be something that, I still live with today, and I tell this story all the time. The reason I show this picture here is I was at a game maybe a month ago, and the gentleman to the far right he's like a big brother to me. He actually played college soccer for Coach Devin, who's in the middle. Dante calls me, he says, hey, where you at? I said, in the suite, I'm at the game, what's going on? He's like, come outside. So I'm like, all right, so I walk outside the suite, and Devin is standing there like, Georgie, what's going on? And so I look at him like, oh man, he gives me a hug. I'm like, what's going on? How you been? He's like, man, I've been following you. You went to college, you played soccer, you had a professional career. Now look at you. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? I was like, come on into the suite. He's like, I ain't even going in the suite, man. I'm staying out here. And so he's like, yeah. And so I tell him that story. And I say, Devin, man, you don't even know. I was like, but you remember when you walked me outside and we had this conversation? He was like, I remember you not letting me sleep, and I remember walking you outside. It's like, But I don't really remember the context of the conversation, right? He's like, I just was trying to guide a young black man on this trip to make sure that you were understanding the moment that you were in, right? And understanding that, hey, the opportunity you have in front of you for this trip can take you a long way, or it can just be a memory that you got to have some fun and kick the soccer ball around, score a couple goals, and go on about your way, right? So the point that I'm trying to make with this particular story is that you don't always know who you are going to have an impact on during your interactions. You may be a mentor to someone, and you might have one conversation with that person. It might be formal in a sense of like big brothers, big sisters, where you set it up. It's very intentional. Someone comes to you and says, hey, will you be my mentor, right? But most of the mentor-mentee interactions that I've had in my life, especially as a youth, especially as I was growing up, were unknowingly guided and quietly shaped me. So, lift as you climb. The reason I use that phrase, I grew up, like I said, I grew up always looking up to those who were doing good things, always trying to imitate, right? We're creatures of imitation. Who has success? How can I get on what they're doing, right? Okay, this person's making mistakes. Don't want to do what they're doing, right? So like we said, you can learn from the bad, you can learn from the good. I grew up in Ohio, played a lot of soccer, always had mentors in my life that I didn't know. Got through college, I joined a fraternity. For those that know the fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, friendship is very important to us. Why am I bringing up the fraternity? My uncle joined the fraternity in 1975. I joined the fraternity in 2009. When I go to Chicago and I see the way men respond to my uncle, I was like, man, he's been a mentor to hundreds of men throughout his fraternal life. And then that carries over into your everyday life. So we always talk about lift as you climb. No matter how much success you have, if you're not pulling other people up with you, then what are you doing, right? And so I talk about this to talk about my story. I leave college, I go, and I'm pretty much done with soccer, if I'm being honest. I went to University of Kentucky, and I wasn't an All-American. I didn't score 50 goals, but I enjoyed playing, and I was trying to go and pursue new endeavors. A friend of mine, he calls me and says, hey, George, they're bringing a professional soccer team to Dayton, Ohio. Bunch of Dutch ownership, essentially. They're bringing a bunch of experienced veteran Dutch players, and it's a summer PDL. So it's not quite professional, but it's kind of a pathway to the professional. So I said, you know what? I'm looking to go to get my MBA. I've always thought about law school. I really don't know. I'm in this weird space that I'm sure all of us can relate to in terms of what do I want to be when I grow up? By the way, I still don't know. And so I'm like, I'll go to this tryout. I go to the tryout. I watch one game of the tryout because most tryouts are like, you play games and they just watch you and they select you. I said, I'm going to sign a contract with this team. Right? And so I did. I made the team. So now I'm like, okay, you're going to pay me to play soccer? Are you kidding me? Okay, yep, forget MBA, forget law school. That sounds stressful. I'm going to go kick soccer balls, right? And so here I was, organically being a mentee again, because now I'm in a space, I'm around players who played in the Dutch Eredivisie in the Netherlands, around players who played in the Bundesliga, around players who had been with the youth national team, who had played in the MLS. So now I'm getting exposed to these guys that are actually playing the game. I didn't go up to a single one of them and say, hey man, will you be my mentor, right? No, but I was watching them, I was asking questions, I was trying to figure out, what did you do that I didn't do, or what did you do that allowed you to have a 10-year career? What have you done that has allowed you to go on and be successful in this space? And so a mentee, right? You're literally trying to learn and be advised and look at the experiences of others to see how you can be successful or grow in that space. So did that, leads to, that summer led to 3 contract offers in the United Soccer League, which is the second division of professional soccer in the US. And I was on my way, right? So 2011 was that year. 2012, I was asked to coach a college soccer team as an assistant coach. So go to UNOH, University of Northwestern Ohio, and now I'm playing, but in my off season, I'm coaching. And this is the first of my 2 college coaching experiences during my playing career, and both very, very different. The first one, I was still young. I show up to training, and all the college guys are looking like, oh, you play professional soccer? Oh, okay, I gotta prove myself to you. Like, let's go. Like, I don't know, right? Where I hadn't necessarily gained the credibility yet. And so the way that those players looked up to me, the way I built relationships with those players was different. After 2 years of being with that team, I still talk to players from that team today. You know, guys are calling me like, hey, you know, I wanted to play pro. Oh, okay, I didn't make it as a pro. Now I'm looking at med school. Now I'm looking at this. Hey, George, I see you're doing this with philanthropic work. How can I get on? Blah, 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 right? So another point to that is building relationships. And so with those young men, I was in a place where I felt like peers. I didn't necessarily feel like, you know, I was 2 years removed from college. I didn't necessarily feel like I was their mentor, right? I didn't feel like I was teaching them, but I was. And so the coolest part about that experience was 2 years with that group, ironically, because of what I learned by being an example, teaching, seeing when players didn't listen to me, seeing when players had a poor attitude, seeing what happened when players had a good attitude, and when they did positive things, I had my best season the next year, right? So learning as a mentor, you would say, that was some of the most valuable learning moments for me. Because as a coach, I'm sitting in the coach's room and we're trying to pick a team and we're talking about how this player wasn't working hard and how this player had a poor attitude, or, hey, this player needs to be rewarded because they've done everything that we've asked of them, right? And so when I went back into the locker room as a player, I was able to take those lessons and say, hey, if I want to be on the field, these are the things I need to do. To be a good leader, to be a good captain, to be a good teammate, to be successful in this, right? I was able to play it on both sides. So continuing on that journey, talking about, you know, lifting as I climb, that's when I came to Louisville. So I talked about as a player, I'm the young player in the locker room. I'm trying to learn from all the experienced players. And before I knew it, I was the old player in the locker room. And so when I came to Louisville, I actually came to Louisville because of a relationship that I built as a young player. So in 2012, I was in Orlando. For those that know the club, James O'Connor was a teammate of mine who then became the head coach of Louisville City on the first year in 2015. James called me, always had a good personality, always was a good attitude. And I know that you've been experiencing this league now, so I want you to come to Louisville. So I did. For other reasons why I stayed in the USL, find me and we'll have coffee or maybe a beverage and talk about that. But when I went to Louisville, the expectation for me was to be a leader in the locker room, right? And to be a mentor. And funny thing is I was young, but I was the oldest player in the locker room when I got to Louisville. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily the most experienced player, though. Doesn't necessarily mean that I had all the answers, right? I was playing with guys that played in Europe. I was playing with guys that, again, had national team experience, had experience that I didn't have. So even though I was the oldest player in the locker room, I was learning from guys that were younger than me, right? And I say that to say, you know, age is not a prerequisite for being a mentor. Get that? We can't mess up the silence. You gotta keep it brand, right?
Keep it brand. Yeah. Strong. There we go. Don't worry, guys. Command strip saw everything.
Yeah. Another reason why I love this space, right? It's just so natural. Right? It's so natural. Oldest player in the locker room. Here we go. Learning from players, seeing success, just leading by example, not knowing that I'm really considered a mentor. And it leads to some success. We win some championships. And then next thing you know, one morning, coach comes into the locker room and he says, hey, I got a better job. Not in these words, obviously. He's way more diplomatic. But he said, I got a better job, I'm making more money, and I have an opportunity that I can't pass up. So I'm taking myself and my staff, and we're going away. We're going to Orlando, right? Every player in that locker room was like, absolutely, you go take that opportunity. We encourage you to do that. What I didn't know was that the ownership would call me into the office and say, hey, George, we want you to coach the team. And I was like, whoa, like, is this a request or are you telling me that we're coaching the team? And so me and two other players for about a month and a half, because of our leadership qualities and because we set an example, we were chosen by the team and by the staff to lead for about 6 weeks. And during that time, man, talk about learning about yourself, talking about learning what it takes to be on the other side, right? Extremely, extremely beneficial moment for me in my life and my career. One of the guys who was a part of that trio is now a head coach for a professional team. And another guy is now a director of an academy. So it goes to show you that, one, there was a reason why we were selected, but also I'm sure that experience was something that guided and pushed and motivated us to go on and achieve things. So not to get away, but again, the reason I tell that story, oh, by the way, we hired a coach, we won another championship, Golden City. And so that really changed how I was viewed in the locker room, right? Because now, working with your peers, your colleagues, you have to make decisions on their playing time, you have to make decisions. Luckily, we didn't have to make decisions on contracts or money or anything like that. But that changed. So now going into the further years of my remaining time in Louisville City, now the focus is on, okay, we have to replenish our team. We have to bring more young players into the group. And when you bring more young players into the group, without it being said, it's our responsibility to mentor these young players and to make sure that they are getting the lessons, that they are learning the things that they need to learn, to not do what I did, but to go on and do things further and beyond what I did. And so that's what happened, right? I didn't set out to say, I'm going to be a mentor to these young players. No, I was just like, hey, Josh and Elijah, that's not what you're supposed to do. Do this. Hey, Carlos, you got to run, man, right? Like these types of things you just naturally did. And I am seeing that today with how it's played a role in these players' lives, but also in my life. So, retired from playing soccer in 2021. The club approached me and said, hey, we want to start a foundation, and we think that you would be a good person to help us build that. And I said, absolutely. What they didn't know was that, well, they did know, but they really didn't know the details was that I was building and becoming more intentional on serving youth, even towards the end of my playing career. So a colleague of mine approached me and he says, hey, I want to start a soccer club in West Louisville. And I said, yeah, let's go. Like, I don't know the club soccer environment as much in Louisville. I've kind of got away from it, but I'm willing to help. I want to give players an opportunity. So mentee, and then became a mentor. Now I'm transitioning into a professional space that's different than my playing career, and I feel like the mentee again, right? A gentleman who approached me is a judge in town, Judge Brian Edwards. He is my mentor, but he's approaching me about an expertise that he doesn't have. So he's looking to me for guidance and advice and the experiences of youth soccer, but at the same time, I'm looking at him like, hey man, you gotta help me figure out this new lane for myself, right? I'm trying to understand what it's like to be in these different circles and how to build a program or how to build a nonprofit and these types of things. And it just so happened that it aligned with my work in the foundation. Intentional. I became very intentional, understanding that now my entire mission, my entire role was to help mentor and help young people grow. So now it wasn't a question, right? So whereas before it was organic, it was something that was happening just because of how I was raised and the things that I was able to learn from others. But now I'm in a position where I can be extremely intentional. Shout out to big brothers and big sisters, became very intentional and I got me a little, right? Like, what is mentorship really about? And the truth is that formal or informal, it really boils down to relationships, right? And for those that are your mentors or those that you mentee, right, like, you're not gonna really listen to me if you don't trust me, right? If we don't have a good relationship, now you may mimic my behaviors or actions and things like that, but it comes down to relationships. And then on the other side of that, as I talked about before, most times it's unknowingly, And so me becoming intentional really changed things, right? For 2 years, I was a program director. I spent my time amongst youth. So I talked about mentee to mentor, back to mentee, now mentor, right? And so now when I'm in the field or I'm on the ground, I am a clear mentor to all these young players, right? Because all the young players look at me and they're like, oh, you're George Davis. You played soccer? I want to play soccer. I want to be a professional soccer player. What do I need to do? Coach, I'm ready to play. I got all the skills. Let me show you. And he kicks the ball at me and I'm like, nah, buddy, you got a long way to go. But here's the things that you have to do. Right? So I say that and those 2 years it really changed how I thought about being a mentor, right? I started to see how my words, how my actions, how players responded to me, and not just players, but also my peers, my colleagues. It really started to make me think about, man, people are watching me, people are listening to me, but at the same time, it's like, man, I'm new to this. I got to answer emails, I got to schedule meetings. You guys got me working from 7 to 7, right? Because I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to grow in this completely different space. There's times where I'm like, man, I want to get off at 1 o'clock and just take care of my body and then go back and run around again, right? But it was new for me. So what am I doing? I'm seeking out mentors. I'm seeking out people that have done this. I'm trying to, okay, what am I doing wrong? How do I get this right? How do I manage my time, right? And that is something also that changed my perspective. And I started to see, as I understand, how I was making an impact. So a couple of stories that I just as I was thinking about this talk, I'm like, man, I got to tell some things. This happened recently. I used to train this young kid. He was 10 to 12 years old, private sessions. About 6 months ago, his dad shoots me a text and he's holding up his jersey and he's wearing number 22. And he's like, hey, got a new jersey number. He decided to go with 22. That was my playing number here. I was like, man, that's cool, right? Like, well done, represent the number well. Last week, our first team, our men's team, played Leganés, a La Liga team. So for those that don't know, Leganés is the top team in Spain. They got relegated, but now they're a good team. And his dad sends me a photo first, the first photo, and the photo was me on the field after we won the championship in 2017, and the kid is standing behind me. And so it's like this little kid, I'm here, I'm talking to somebody, and the kid is standing behind me. About 5 minutes later, I get another message, and it's this kid playing on the field, wearing a Lou City jersey for Leganés. And when I tell you, I just put my phone down. I'm like, can I cuss? It's like, damn. Like, one, time flies, right? Like, I'm getting older. But two, man, the kid, the messages, whatever I did that has allowed him to go from this kid watching the game to now he's on the field with professionals and he's still in high school. And his dad feels that I played a part enough that he wanted to show me, hey, thanks for supporting my young man. Thanks for giving him some guidance and a pathway in terms of this. And I don't take sole responsibility, right? It takes a village, right? But it was a touching moment for me to say, man, I'm really making an impact here. We are making an impact on these young people and they're watching even when we don't know they are. Another story I have, which is separate than soccer, and honestly, it's probably a little more emotional than I want to get in this situation, but it's meaningful. So I have a cousin, he lives in Georgia. He's 7, 8 years younger than me, maybe. And we're close. I mean, close. We see each other, as my boy, right? But I don't talk to him every day. I could count on my hand how many times we've had like a real conversation about his path and my success and different things like that. And so one of my other cousins got married, probably had a few drinks, and we're talking, and he's asking me about my career, and he's asking me about my successes. But all I was talking to him about was my shortfalls. And it wasn't that like, I'm not proud of my success, but I was literally just telling him like, hey man, I wanted to do this and I ran into this barrier, or I failed here, or these are the things I was trying to do, but I couldn't do it. Or, hey, these are the things I want to do. These are the things I'm still trying to achieve. And next thing I know, I'm looking at him and he's like crying. And I'm like, cuz, what are you crying for? Like, and he's like, I've always looked at you as my mentor, and like I look at your success and I admire you and I look up to you, and to hear you talk to me about where you failed or your shortfalls, he's like, I just had no idea. I didn't know, right? And the reason I say that is because here he is looking at me from afar, and he gets to see a headline, or he gets to see me get a new position or an award or something like that. And he's just like, oh man, I'm trying to be like, cuz I'm gonna go get it. Like, he's doing all these great things, da 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 da. And it shifted his perspective and like, hey, none of this stuff is easy, man. Like, we all have aspirations, we all have endeavors that we want to go pursue, and you're gonna meet roadblocks, and and that later on in the conversation, he's like, man, that's more motivation than anything you've ever said to me. Because like, yeah, I've watched your success, but I've never actually got to talk to you about that success. So that story is like the forms of mentorship, right? At the beginning of our relationship, when we were kids or he was growing up, it was all about my actions and my behaviors. But now as we're adults, and now he's going through his own trials and tribulations, now it's about the words. Now it's like, hey, talk to me about this. Now this is intentional. Like, be my mentor. These are the things I'm struggling with. How do you help me? How do we get past it? And I do the same thing, right? There's people in my life. I talk about Judge Edwards, for example, where he's looking at me for advice, right? He's like, hey, how do we do this with the teams and the guidance and this and that? But I'm calling him and I'm intentional on, hey, I'm struggling with this. How do I get past this? This situation is going on. Hey, and he's in government, so it's completely different industries, right? Like, completely different spaces. And so I'm again, a mentee again. And then to get back to my story, a year ago, I was promoted to executive director. Mentee again. Like, what is going on? Like, okay, now I have to manage a board, right? Now I'm calling on people to say, okay, what does this look like? How is this supposed to look? What's the right way to do this? Help me not make the same mistakes that you made, right? Or what are some things that you would do differently, right? And this is also making an impact. And the other thing that I would say that I had no idea about, or that is really fresh to me and gives me more motivation, is mentorship amongst your peers and colleagues. I had a friend say to me recently, we're 2 years apart, I mean, we're the same age. She's doing really well professionally, and she said, you're my mentor. And I looked at her and I'm like, I'm your mentor? And she's like, well, yeah, like, you inspire me. I look up to the things you do. And in the same breath, I'm like, well, when you put it that way, you're also my mentor, right? Because you're in a different space and you're in a different industry, and I admire your success and I look up to the things that you're doing. So, hey, be my mentor, I'll be your mentor, And so that is also new, right? And I go back to the age thing, like, age is no prerequisite to mentorship, and there's people that I inquire that are younger than me that I still look up to, And the last story I'll say about, making an impact is I talked about the young players that were in the locker room with us. And we've been really lucky at Louisville City to have some players that we're put into an adult environment with guys that are playing for their families and playing for their lives. And they're teenagers, just trying to have fun. For those that, try to understand what that is like, especially when the climate of youth sports, when we talk about how kids are getting trained and ranked and, all these different things from the time they're 10 to 12 years old. But there are players that get put into these environments and it has an extremely positive effect on them. And we are fortunate to have had players, and in the later messaging is that, how do you accept it, right? Like, talk about being intentional, talk about making an impact, but the information is only as good as it's taken in. And we had a player, he was sold, and I know that sounds crazy, but players get sold in soccer. And he's gone to higher levels and he's achieving great things. And before it went to the news, and before it went to the media, the player sends me a text message and he says, "Hey, George, I just want to thank you for all the guidance, all the advice you gave me. I've always looked up to you. I want to let you know that I just signed my contract and I'm going to be going to this team and blah, 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 blah." And again, not knowing really the impact that I had on that player directly, but for him to take time out of it, he's celebrating. I can imagine how many, messages this kid's getting and all the, the excitement around him. And he chooses to send me a note to say, "Hey, thanks for being a mentor," right? That's the reason, that's the passion, that's the motivation for me in terms of why I continue to do what I do, why mentorship is so impactful for me. Whether I know about it, whether I know that I'm your mentor, whether I don't, I know that my actions, my behaviors, and my words are having an impact on somebody. And likewise, more people that don't know are having a massive impact on me. I could probably go on my phone or probably pull up 10 people right now that have had a massive impact on my life and my success that don't even know. And that's the real message I think that I want to pass on to this. So, all right, I got to give some credit to my girlfriend. So we're talking about this, and I'm like, I want to tie in that, look, we start life as a mentee, we become a mentor. Now I'm in this space where I'm a mentee and a mentor. I was like, but when I walk out of the door every day, the first conversation I have, I don't know if I'm going to learn something or if I'm going to teach somebody, right? And so mentorship is a coin toss. One side seeks and the other side gives back. And so be intentional on whichever side that you land on, right? Now, this could have another meaning to it, right? It's a coin toss, right? It's not always going to be the right information. It's not always going to be true. It's not always going to help you, right? It's for you to decipher and how you perceive the information or the action or the behavior. And then back to what I said earlier, we all have different experiences. The decision you made in this particular situation, if I make the same decision today, doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision, right? So understanding how our experiences are all different, how we're all shaped differently, and that if we take all the information in, then we can make decisions that are best for us or best for the situation. I'm incredibly humbled to be able to talk about this topic with you all. It is, as you can tell, it's meaningful to me. I'm proud of myself because I stayed pretty good on track. This is something I thought about when I first got the invitation, like, man, I could just get up here and just tell story after story and story after story. But I think it's important to understand, too, about why it's important to me in my pathway. And if there's one thing that I can leave you all with, as I said in the earlier question about, sorry, what was the question? I know my answer. What was the question that we all talked about with each other?
A piece of advice.
A piece of advice that someone gave to me. And I said, success is not finite, right? So even though you've achieved success, doesn't mean that that's going to keep providing you success. Also, like, we've all done some good things. It doesn't mean we can stop, right? And I think the same with mentorship. Just because I've mentored one person doesn't mean that I'm done. Oh, hands tied, I'm good, right? And just because I've learned something from someone means that I can't continue to learn. So be intentional. We never know how our connections impact people. You never know how your actions and your behaviors and your words are going to have an effect on someone. And I want to thank everybody here for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Hannah, Nadia, and the Creative Mornings team. Have a great day.